Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1 1520th year of the sea calendar, East Sea, Shells Town. The midday sun was scorching, baking the stone slabs on the street until they were scalding hot. A stray dog with mottled fur was panting along the base of the wall. Its original route was straight ahead, but it stopped when it passed an inconspicuous house. As if sensing some kind of tremor from the depths of its soul, the dog suddenly stopped, tucked its tail between its legs, and made a large circle before slipping away along the drainage ditch on the other side of the street. In the dog world of Shells, a terrifying urban legend circulates. If you don't want to perish, stay away from that room with the blue curtain hanging on the door. Because a devil's hand lurks there, any canine that passes by could be struck deadly without warning, slapped away. Is this a distortion of human nature, or a decline in morality? The story begins a month ago. That night, it was hot and humid. Our protagonist, Lin Lei, was lying on the bed in a wood shape, dreaming of marrying the Empress. Suddenly, a disturbing buzzing sound broke the silence. Mosquito. The Aedes mosquito, a specialty of the East Daxia Sea, can cause itching for 3 days after a single bite. Lin Lei, still half asleep, raised his right hand and, without even opening his eyes, instinctively slapped his cheek. Snap! The world is quiet now. The moment my palm touched that clueless mosquito, a strange warm current seeped into my skin along the lines of my palm and instantly traveled throughout my internal organs. The feeling was like drinking a mouthful of warm ginger soup on a cold winter's day. It was wonderfully comforting. Lin Lei suddenly opened his eyes, all sleepiness gone. As a seasoned bookworm who has been immersed in the world of online novels for many years, he is all too familiar with this feeling. Hanging up, though late, it's here. My God, do you know how I've spent the last 5 years? Lin Lei looked at the smear of mosquito blood on his palm, his eyes slightly moist. Before he could finish his reflection, a golden card gleaming with a faint light suddenly appeared in his mind. The card is beautifully designed, depicting a sharp long sword tightly wrapped around a line with 2 plus signs. Below, in an archaic font, is written the words, Devil's Dance. The effect is simple and straightforward, gain the keystone rune effects of Fleet Step and Grasp of the Undying. Lin Lei was stunned. Aren't these the runes from Hextech Aram, the game he played every night after get off work before he time traveled? System? Are you there? He tentatively called out in his mind. Do you have a beginner's guide? An instruction manual would be fine too. Stop playing dead, come out and show yourself. My mind was completely silent, except for that golden card floating quietly. It seems to be a mute system. You'll have to figure it out yourself. Lin Lei calmed himself down, and after some fiddling, finally summoned a semi-transparent attribute panel in the corner of his retina. This interface is practically a carbon copy of the League of Legends attribute panel, displaying attack damage, ability power, health, and mana. The data above is simply appalling. Calling him a super soldier is an insult to super soldiers. The equipment slots are all empty. All 7 skill slots are grayed out. Of the 5 rune slots, only the first one was lit up, holding the Devil's Dance rune. So that warm current just now. Lin Lei looked at his palm, lost in thought. Did it trigger the grasp of immortality? As a veteran player with 13 years of League of Legends experience, he was well aware of how overpowered these 2 runes were. In particular, Unbreakable Grip allows the user to deal extra damage, heal themselves, and permanently gain 5 health points every 4 seconds when attacking a hero in combat. In this real world, is swatting mosquitoes also considered combat? To verify his hypothesis, Lin Lei slapped himself. It hurts a lot, but there's no reaction. It seems the system has fixed the bug of stepping on the right foot with the left foot, then stepping on the left foot with the right foot, spiraling upwards, making it impossible to gain health by self-harm. Linley was not discouraged, he turned his gaze to the window. That night, the mosquitoes and shields were wiped out. Linley was like a tireless killing machine, leaping and bounding about. Although tests showed that unbreakable grip had a cooldown of about 1 minute to increase maximum health, and killing a mosquito only increased health by 1 point, this did not dampen Linley's enthusiasm. Even just 1 point? Gentlemen, if you could grow 1 millimeter with every pulse, would you also stay up all night, working until you die? Moreover, in this world where pirates roam freely and human life is cheap, every extra drop of blood is a lifeline. After the mosquitoes in the room were all killed, Linley even went so far as to rush into the yard in a frenzy. That night, all the neighbors in the neighborhood had a strange dream. In my dream, there were only rhythmic, crisp, and pleasant slapping sounds that never stopped throughout the night. The next morning, at Aunt Lillage's restaurant, Linley, sporting 2 enormous dark circles under his eyes, yawned repeatedly as he pushed open the door. Rika, the little girl wiping the table, looked up, blinked her big eyes, and asked innocently. "Brother Linley, did you train all night last night too?" Linley, who was about to go help in the kitchen, stumbled and turned back in confusion. "Rika, how did you know?" Rika stretched out her chubby little hand and drew 2 circles over her eyes. "Because every time Dad comes back from a sea trip, he has these big dark circles under his eyes the next day. Dad says it's because he and Mom exercised in their room all night." Cough cough cough. Aunt Lillage, who was doing the accounting at the counter, suddenly coughed, and her originally fair cheeks instantly turned bright red. Linley understood. Rika's father, Uncle Kachabai, is a key member of the East Daxia Sea subsidiary of the world-renowned Shenliu Shipping. He is away at sea most of the year, earning a high salary, but can only come home once every few months. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, so it's perfectly reasonable for the couple to spend the whole night exchanging affection. 5 years ago, when Linley first transmigrated, his parents died in an accident. If it weren't for Uncle Kachabai's chivalrous intervention, who fended off the town's bullies who coveted his property, Linley would have been homeless long ago. Linley always kept this kindness in his heart. That's why he works at Aunt Lillage's restaurant. Although the salary wasn't much, it included 3 meals a day, which was a rare form of stability in these chaotic times. Unfortunately, this tranquility was shattered 3 years ago. Newly appointed Navy Captain Monka has taken over the town of Shells. This Axe King ruled a suffocating reign of terror in the town. In this world, might makes right. For ordinary people, Monka's giant axe, capable of easily splitting boulders, is absolute truth. The power system in the One Piece world is very brutal, and can be roughly divided into 3 realms: Senior Realm, Fellow Deist Realm, and Ant Realm. Linley used to be nothing more than an ant. Even Uncle Kachabai, who can carry 300 kilograms of cargo, is merely classified as an ordinary person in this world. But things are different now. For the past month, Linley has spent all his time outside of work grinding monsters. He was pleasantly surprised to find that attacking larger creatures resulted in a higher health bonus. Killing a mosquito adds 1 point. Stunning the mouse adds 2 points. Slap the stray dog away. Add a full 3 points. Thus began the darkest hour for the stray dogs of Shells. If that terrifying man touches you even once, you'll suffer a concussion at best, and faint on the spot at worst. Over time, the area within 100 meters of Linley's house became a no-go zone for dogs. He also fully understood the effects of the revised Undying grip and swift steps. Unbreakable grip: in combat, every 4 seconds, your next basic attack on the target will deal magic damage equal to 4% of your maximum health and heal you for 2% of your maximum health. Every minute, when Unbreakable grip is triggered again, your maximum health increases by 1/100, with a daily trigger limit of 80 times. Swift steps: combat or movement can charge this skill. Once fully charged, your next basic attack will increase your movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. Welcome. Rika's clear voice interrupted Linley's thoughts. A man who looked somewhat fierce walked in through the door. He had a dark green silk scarf wrapped around his left arm, a green belly wrap around his waist, and 3 teardrop-shaped gold earrings on his left ear. Most striking of all were the 3 knives hanging at his waist. Roronoa Zoro, the future world's greatest swordsman, now a bounty hunter in the East Blue. Linley wiped the cup, his gaze lingering on Zoro for a moment. In his eyes, this wasn't a person at all, it was clearly a giant, walking blood bag. If I could slap this guy, I wonder how many health points I'd gain? Zoro found a corner to sit down and called out casually, "Boss, do you have any wine? And some food too, I'm starving." Before Aunt Lilija could reply, the restaurant door was violently kicked open. "Get out of the way! All of you, get out of the way!" A young man wearing a purple suit and sporting a ridiculous middle-part hairstyle swaggered in. He was holding a chain, and at the other end of the chain was a giant wolf, half the height of a man. Belumub, Colonel Monka's good-for-nothing son. The giant wolf was clearly spoiled, it bared its teeth as soon as it entered, drool dripping onto the floor, its fierce gaze sweeping over the diners. The restaurant patrons instantly fell silent, heads bowed as they ate their food, afraid of getting into trouble. "Hey, you over there, bring up all the good food for my Moto to try." Belmberg arrogantly pointed at Rika. The wolf named Moto seemed to smell the aroma of the meat Rika was holding. It suddenly lunged forward, its large mouth full of fangs heading straight for Rika. Ah! Rika was so frightened that she stood frozen on the spot. "You're asking for it." Lin Lei's eyes turned cold. This damn conditioned reflex. During that month, he developed muscle memory for any canine that dared to bare its teeth in front of him. Almost the instant the wolf lunged out, Linley moved, his right hand lashing out with a gust of wind towards the wolf's head. This palm strike brought forth the monstrous power from the thousands of extra health points he had accumulated over the past month. However, someone was faster than him. A flash of cold light appeared. Pfft! Before it could even scream, the once arrogant giant wolf was decapitated, its blood splattering everywhere. Zoro sheathed his sword, sat back down in his chair, as if he had merely swatted a fly. Lin Lei's hand hovered in mid-air, and he awkwardly withdrew it. "Stealing kills," he muttered to himself, feeling a little regretful about the 3 health points he had missed. "Moto! My Motoro!" Bearmeber stared at the wolf carcass on the ground and let out a pig-like howl. He pointed a trembling finger at the green-haired swordsman. Do you know who he is? You dared to kill Colonel Monka's son's pet." Zoro picked at his ear, looking impatient. "Too noisy. It attacked first. I don't care. I'm going to tell my dad. I'm going to have him arrest you." Belumber roared hysterically, then his gaze swept across the restaurant with a sinister look. "And you too. Everyone in this shop, and that guy who tried to attack earlier, you're all going to die." Upon hearing the name Monka, Aunt Lilija turned pale and instinctively shielded Rika behind her. Zoro frowned, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "This has nothing to do with them. I killed them." Belumber's eyes darted around, and a cunning smile crept across his face. "Oh? Want to play the hero? Fine. As long as you obediently surrender and let me tie you up in the execution ground of the naval base and leave you to bake in the sun for a month, I'll let these lowly people go. How about it? Do you dare to take this bet?" The restaurant was deathly silent. Everyone knows that if you don't eat or drink for a month under the scorching sun, even the strongest man would turn into a dried-up corpse, let alone a human. Zoro paused for a moment, glancing at Rika, who was trembling behind her mother, and then at Linley, who stood expressionless beside her. "Good." Zoro loosened his grip on the hilt of his sword, a defiant smile creeping across his face. "1 month it is. If I make it through, you have to keep your promise. Belmere was overjoyed, ha ha ha. Good. You said it yourself. Just as Zoro was about to stand up and let the Marines tie him up, a hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder. Immediately afterwards. Smack! A crisp, loud slap echoed in the quiet restaurant. Zoro was knocked so hard he staggered, his head nearly hitting the table. He clutched the back of his head, whirled around, and glared at me, BD. Why did you ambush me? Trigger unbreakable grip, health plus 50. Standing behind him, Lin Lei flicked his hand, secretly pleased but showing it. Jade must be carved to become a gem, this slap is meant to wake you up, you blockhead. Hey! Zoro was dumbfounded. Linley, looking utterly disappointed, pointed at Belmere and sneered. Is your brain filled with mush? Trusting this scum? It's like asking a tiger for its skin, or trying to persuade a mosquito not to suck your blood. You think he'll release you after a month? Don't be naive. The moment you're tied up, he'll burn this shop down and use you as target practice. Bearmebber, his thoughts exposed, changed his expression and frantically pulled a flintlock pistol from his pocket. You're talking nonsense. How dare you slander Colonel Monka's son? I'll kill you. Before the dark muzzle of the gun could even be raised, Lin Lei's figure had already closed in. The swift steps movement speed bonus is still active. Although Lin Lei doesn't yet possess any extraordinary speed, in the confined space of the restaurant, that burst of power in a single moment is enough for him to cover a distance of 2 meters. Smack! Another loud bang, even more devastating than the blow to Zoro earlier. The slap landed squarely on Belumber's face. This arrogant spoiled brat spun around twice like a top, several bloodshot teeth flew out, then his eyes rolled back, and he fell straight to the ground, twitching twice before going still. The people in the restaurant were dumbfounded. Aunt Lulgia covered her mouth, looking at the collapsed Bearmebber in horror. That's Colonel Monka's son. The sky is really falling. Chapter 2. All the patrons in the restaurant looked at Linley with pity, as if they were looking at a prisoner about to be sentenced to death. Rika gripped the hem of her mother's apron tightly, her big eyes brimming with tears, but she dared not cry out. Aunt Lulgia turned ashen-faced, staring at the motionless purple suit on the ground. That was Colonel Monka's son. In Shell's town, this identity is even more useful than being a celestial dragon. Zoro sheathed the long sword called Wado Ikimonji back into his waistband, his brow furrowed in a frown. He stared at Linley's retreating figure as if he were looking at some unknown creature that had just crawled out of the deep sea. The speed of that slap was indeed ridiculously fast. And, is there something wrong with this guy's thought process? Hey, waiter! Zoro stood up, his boots making a dull thud on the floor. Do you even know what you're doing? I may not like this good-for-nothing, but beating him up like this will cause that madman, Monka, to turn the whole town upside down. Linley stopped and glanced back at Zoro. His gaze was strange, it didn't seem like he was looking at a living person, but rather like he was appraising a priceless treasure. Just to clarify, my name isn't Waiter, it's Lin Lei. Linley pointed to Belmere on the ground, his tone relaxed. Secondly, it's not about what I want to do, it's that we have no choice. After this guy wakes up, do you think he'll be grateful that we let him go? No, he'll just bring more people and raise this place to the ground. Zoro fell silent. He was a bounty hunter, and had seen his share of scum, so he knew Linley was telling the truth. Therefore, rather than waiting to be killed, it's better to take the initiative. Linley flexed his wrist, the rune mark on his palm was faintly warm. Besides, I'm quite interested in that guy who calls himself Axe King. I heard he's pretty durable. Zoro's lips twitched slightly. Durable? Shouldn't a normal person be focusing on how brutal Monka was? Madman! Zoro cursed under his breath, then reached up and untied the dark green bandana from his arm, slowly tying it around his head. However, this idea sounds not bad. Lin Lei smiled. That's right. Aunt Liljia, take Rika to the cellar to hide. Lin Lei turned and instructed. No matter what's going on outside, don't come out. Wait for me and this green-haired guy to come back for dinner. Who's the green algae head? Zoro's temple throbbed. Aunt Liljia nodded, her voice trembling. She knew it was pointless to say anything now, these two young people had gotten themselves into big trouble while protecting them. Just as she was about to turn around, Xiao Lixiang, who hadn't said a word, suddenly broke free from her mother's hand, ran to the counter with her short legs, took out 2 rice balls carefully wrapped in bamboo leaves, and stuffed them into Lin Lei's hands. Brother Lin Lei, this is something I made myself, for you and Brother Green Algae Head. The little girl tilted her head back, her big eyes brimming with tears, but she tried hard not to let them fall. Be careful, I'll be waiting for you to come back. Aunt Liljia's eyes were slightly red. She stepped forward and took Lixiang's hand again, gave Lin Lei a deep look, and then led her daughter, who kept looking back, into the kitchen. Let's go. Lin Lei put away the rice balls, kicked aside the purple suit blocking his way, and strode out the door. The midday sun was still scorching. The streets were deserted, except for a few townspeople hiding behind curtains, staring at the 2 clueless young men with terrified eyes. The road to the naval base is not far. But before they had gone halfway, a series of hurried and chaotic footsteps came from the street corner. Over there! Hurry! Someone reported that young Master Belameber is in trouble. Surround them! Dozens of naval soldiers in white and blue uniforms, carrying rifles, emerged from all directions, panting, and instantly blocked the street. The dark muzzles of guns were all pointed at Linley and Zoro. The leader was a second lieutenant, sweating profusely, clearly terrified by Monka's intimidating presence. He immediately noticed the mess in the restaurant behind Lin Lei, and his face turned deathly pale. You bunch of thugs! The lieutenant's voice was trembling. How dare you cause trouble in Shell's town? Surrender now, or you'll be killed without mercy. Zoro placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword, crouched slightly, and assumed an offensive stance. There are quite a lot of people. He licked his lips, a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. Perfect for warming up. Etc. Linley suddenly reached out and stopped Zoro, who was about to draw his sword. Zoro was taken aback. What? You want to surrender? Don't rush to kill. Linley looked at the group of Marines before him, his eyes gleaming, as if he were seeing a massive wave of advancing troops. These are all walking, we're all born of parents, so let's avoid violence if possible. Let me try to reason with them first. Reform. Zoro looked completely bewildered. Before he could react, Lin Lei had already moved. With a resounding stomp of his leather shoes on the stone pavement, swift steps is fully charged. Linley's figure blurred instantly, like a ghostly shadow, and he charged directly into the crowd of Navy personnel. Fire! Fire now! The lieutenant roared in terror. Bang! 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 Several gunshots shattered the tranquility of the street. But Lin Lei showed no intention of dodging. Health points, 4,325. His current life force is dozens of times that of an ordinary person. Although he is not invulnerable to swords and spears, as long as this old-fashioned flintlock gun does not hit a vital spot, it will only scratch his skin. A lead bullet grazed Linley's shoulder, sending a trail of blood flying. Lin Lei didn't even flinch, he simply slapped the nearest Navy officer across the face. Smack! The sharp crack was even more piercing than a gunshot. The Navy officer didn't even utter a sound. He was struck as if by a sledgehammer, spun around 3 times, rolled his eyes, and collapsed limply to the ground. Trigger unbreakable grip, health +5. Tisk, only 5 more. Lin Lei felt a little regretful, but his hands didn't stop moving at all. He was like a hungry wolf charging into a flock of sheep, needing no fancy moves whatsoever. A slap on the left, a slap on the right. They didn't even use their fists, they were all wearing the same style of big hats. Smack! 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 The crisp sound of slaps echoed incessantly, rhythmic and sending chills down one's spine. Those naval soldiers who usually acted arrogantly were like paper in front of Linley. If you are brushed by that seemingly ordinary palm, at best your teeth will fly out, at worst you will faint on the spot. Zoro stood behind, gripping the hilt of his sword, unsure whether to draw it or not. He watched Lin Lei weave through the crowd, someone falling with every slap, and his lips twitched involuntarily. What style of martial arts does this guy belong to? Zoro has seen people use swords, guns, fists, and even teeth. But this was the first time he had ever seen a school of thought that specialized in slapping people. Moreover, that force is unbelievably strong. Less than 3 minutes. The streets were littered with sailors, their cheeks swollen like buns, groans echoing throughout. Lin Lei stood in the middle of the road, shook the sweat off his hands, and glanced at his attribute panel. Health points, 4,340. Comfortable. Lin Lei let out a long breath, feeling the warm current within him grow stronger. Although the health boost only triggered 3 times and added 15 points, it's a permanent attribute. Little by little, one day we'll be able to withstand a nuclear bomb with our own bodies. He turned to look at the dumbfounded Zoro, grinned, and said, "Done. Let's go see the main character." Zoro silently loosened his grip on the hilt of his sword, and his gaze towards Linley held a hint of wariness towards some unknown, abnormal being. Do you have some kind of unusual fetish?" Zoro couldn't help but ask. "This is called palm technique, you wouldn't understand." Lin Lei was talking nonsense with a straight face. "Every slap contains my understanding of life." Zoro decided not to respond. The two stepped over the wounded soldiers scattered on the ground and continued walking towards the naval base. A huge statue is under construction on the parade ground of the naval base. It was a statue of a man, with a metal jaw embedded in his chin, and a huge axe in his right hand, raised high as if to cleave the sky. Below the statue, a burly man sits in a grand chair, holding a glass of red wine. He had short blonde hair, a metal jaw on his chin, and a sharp, giant axe wrapped around his right arm. Captain Monka, 153rd Naval Squadron. Monka was in a bad mood at this moment. Because his statue was slightly crooked. A bunch of useless trash. Monka suddenly stood up and kicked the kneeling foreman in front of him, sending him flying. Lao Tzu's statue is a symbol of perfection. If it has even the slightest flaw, I'll chop off your heads. The surrounding soldiers and craftsmen trembled with fear, not daring to breathe. Just then, a commotion arose from the direction of the main gate. 2 figures walked confidently into the playground, backlit by the sun. "Hey, you guy with the metal block in your chin." Lin Lei stood in the center of the playground, pointed to the unfinished statue, and spoke loudly enough for everyone present to hear. "This statue is really ugly, just like you, exuding the air of a nouveau riche." The entire room fell silent. Everyone stared in horror at this reckless young man. In the town of Shells, no one had ever dared to speak to Monka like that. The last one who dared to talk back is now buried under a 2-meter-high mound of grass. Monka slowly turned around, his sinister gaze fixed on Linley. He didn't fly into a rage, instead, he revealed a cruel smile. "Interesting." Monka raised the giant axe on his right arm, its blade gleaming coldly in the sunlight. "It seems I've been too lax in enforcing discipline in town lately. Any Tom, DK, or Harry dares to bark at me like that. And you?" Morgan looked at Zoro beside him. "3 swords hanging from your waist. You must be Roronoa Zoro, the bounty hunter? What, you want to come here to die too?" Zoro drew Wado Ikimonji, put it in his mouth, and drew a sword in each hand, assuming his signature three-sword style stance. To die? No. Zoro mumbled indistinctly. I'm here to chop you up. Ha 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 ha. Monka burst into wild laughter, the sound so loud it made the surrounding glass tremble. Cut me? In this town, I am the king. I am the law. Anyone who disobeys me shall die. Before he could finish speaking, the stone bricks beneath Monka's feet suddenly cracked. With his terrifying brute strength, he charged forward like a raging rhinoceros. The towering, over 2-meter-tall figure stirred up a gust of wind, instantly closing the distance. Prepare to die. The massive axe wielder was raised high, accompanied by a dull whistling sound, and then slammed down towards the two of them. Such a heavy killing intent. Zoro's eyes narrowed, and he was about to swing his sword to block. But he soon realized that Monka's powerful axe blow was not aimed at him, but at Linley. Linley stood still, watching the giant axe fall down on him. Instead of dodging, he took a step forward. He could sense that the huge guy in front of him had a very high health bar. In other words, this Monka in front of him allows him to happily fleece people for a while. Faced with a strike powerful enough to split rocks, he did something that everyone thought was insane. Instead of dodging, he raised his right hand, fingers spread, and charged towards the giant axe. This guy thinks he can catch a blade barehanded. Zoro's pupils contracted sharply. You're asking for death. Monka sneered, and his giant axe came crashing down with immense force. Boom! Smoke and dust rose everywhere. The soldiers on the parade ground covered their eyes, not wanting to witness the gruesome sight of the young man being cleaved in two. However, a few seconds later, the smoke and dust cleared. Everyone stared in disbelief, their mouths agape. Lin Lei was seen bracing himself with one hand on the massive axe blade, his feet deeply embedded in the ground, his knees slightly bent, and a trickle of blood escaping from the corner of his mouth. But he blocked it. With just his bare hand, he managed to block Monka's full-force attack. Although his palms were covered in blood, Lin Lei's smile grew even brighter. Because at the very moment of contact, a powerful surge of warmth flowed into his body. Triggering the Undying grip, permanently increases health by 20. Cool. Lin Lei licked the blood from the corner of his mouth, feeling the surge in his blood volume, his eyes practically overflowing with greed. This isn't axe hand Monka at all. This is clearly a walking super health potion. Hey, big guy. Lin Lei looked up at the astonished Monka, grinned, and revealed a set of white teeth. Is that all the strength you have? Didn't you eat? Monka was stunned. He had killed countless pirates in his life, but he had never seen such a pervert who looked like he was enjoying being killed. Now that you've finished chopping, it's my turn. Lin Lei exerted a sudden burst of strength and actually pushed the giant axe away, raising his right hand high. The runes flashed wildly in his palm. This slap was for Rika. Lin Lei's voice echoed across the playground. Smack! The loud noise was like a thunderclap from a clear sky. Monka's massive body, over 2 meters tall, was sent flying by the slap, soaring backward like a rag doll and crashing heavily into the unfinished giant statue. Boom! The statue collapsed with a crash, burying Monka beneath the rubble. The entire room fell silent. Zoro nearly dropped the knife from his mouth. Linley shook his slightly numb hand, turned to look at the dumbfounded Zoro, and said with an innocent expression. See? I told you he was tough, right? He survived such a huge commotion and could still, cough, hit me a few more times. Chapter 3. Smoke and dust filled the air, and gravel tumbled down. The statue that symbolized Monka's absolute authority is now nothing but ruins. In the center of the ruins, a huge severed metal hand stands out conspicuously. It is the axe of the Monka statue, now comically stuck in the soil. Cough, cough, cough. A violent coughing sound came from under the pile of rocks. The rubble was cleared away, and Monka, his head covered in blood, stumbled to his feet. His once proud metal jawline was now crooked from being slapped, and his originally fierce eyes were now filled with confusion and disbelief. He's Monka, the man known as the Axe King. He was actually slapped away by some nobody? Unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. Monka roared, his eyes bloodshot. I'll tear you to pieces. Faced with the enraged Monka, Linley not only did not adopt a defensive stance, but instead looked down at his palm, then looked up at the sky, muttering something under his breath. That palm strike just now triggered the Undying grip, dealing approximately 174 points of magic damage, plus my negligible 15 points of physical attack. Lin Lei quickly calculated in his mind. Total damage close to 190. How can this guy still stand up and roar so loudly? Linley looked Monka up and down, his gaze like that of a butcher eyeing a fat pig waiting to be slaughtered. In this world, there are no data-driven displays for armor and magic resistance. However, he knew very well that the magical damage caused by Undying grip was equivalent to true damage to those without special defensive measures. Morgan has neither armament haki nor the iron body technique from the 6 powers of the Navy. He relies solely on his physical strength to withstand attacks. A blood cow. Lin Lei's eyes lit up. To him now, Monka was no longer some terrifying naval captain, he was simply a giant, mobile experience pack. Go to hell! Monka roared and charged forward again, his remaining left hand clenched into a fist, while his right hand, wielding a giant axe, though somewhat deformed, still carried a deadly intimidating power. Seeing this, Zoro flicked his wrist, preparing to step forward to help. Don't move! Linley shouted, stopping Zoro. Leave this strange person to me, nobody else is allowed to interfere. Zoro froze, his face darkening. This guy's food possessiveness is way too obvious. As they were speaking, Monka had already rushed in front of them. Lin Lei took a deep breath, changed his footwork, and instead of choosing a direct confrontation, he dodged to the side. Monka's giant axe grazed Linley's clothes and struck the ground, sending sparks flying. 1 2 3. Lin Lei dodged while silently counting in his mind. He's waiting. Wait for that 1-minute cooldown period. Don't hide if you dare. Enraged, Monka swung his giant axe wildly, smashing the paving stones on the playground to pieces. Lin Lei was like a slippery eel, weaving through the gaps in Monka's attacks. Even if he gets punched occasionally, with his health points exceeding 4,000, he only loses a tiny bit of health. Finally, the countdown in my heart reached 0. The runes in his palm glowed with a faint, almost imperceptible light once more. Time's up! Lin Lei abruptly stopped in his tracks facing the giant axe that was coming at him. He not only did not retreat, but instead charged forward. Smack! Another crisp, melodious loud bang rang out. Monka's massive body was lifted off the ground once more, spinning 360 degrees in the air before crashing heavily to the ground. Triggering Unbreakable Grip, permanently increases health by 20. Cool. Lin Lei shook his hand, looked at Monka who was lying on the ground convulsing, and did not press his advantage. Instead, he took 2 steps back, crossed his arms, and quietly watched him. The entire venue was deathly silent. The naval soldiers' hands trembled as they gripped their guns. They looked at the young man, who seemed like a demon, and then at the colonel, who was being beaten helplessly. Their worldviews were crumbling. Zoro stood to the side, holding his sword, his brows furrowed even more deeply. What is this guy doing? As a top swordsman, Zoro possesses keen insight. He could see that after that slap, Monka had created a huge opening. If Linley wanted to, he could easily finish him off with a single blow. But Lin Lei did not. He stood there as if waiting for some kind of ceremony, even admiring the scenery. 1 minute later, Monka shakily stood up again, half his face swollen like a steamed bun, several teeth missing, and his speech slurred. I am a naval captain, I am the king here. Smack. Before he could finish speaking, Linley delivered his third slap precisely on time. Monka fell to the ground again. Zoro. Another long minute of waiting. Monka struggled to his feet, his eyes already somewhat unfocused. Smack. The fourth slap. This time, Linley even thoughtfully switched to his left hand for the sake of symmetry. The atmosphere on the playground became extremely eerie. This is hardly a life-or-death struggle. This is clearly one-sided bullying, and it's rhythmic and planned bullying. Zoro looked at Linley's smiling face, which inexplicably sent chills down his spine, and his opinion of this accomplice he had only recently met rose another notch. He's incredibly strong, but his mind seems to be seriously flawed. Psychological attack. Zoro secretly speculated. To utterly destroy the opponent's will through such humiliation? What a terrifying man! Zoro was overthinking it. Linley was simply trying to take advantage of the situation. These days, it's not easy to find a monster that's tough and can take a lot of damage. In a beginner's village like the East Sea, elite monsters of Monka's level are extremely rare. I won't complete the daily limit of 80 attempts. Oh wait, Monka's physique probably couldn't withstand 80 times. Then you'll just have to try it as many times as possible. The fifth slap. The sixth slap. Until the 10th time. Monka's once dignified face had been slapped into a pig's head, his whole body swollen up so much that even his own mother probably wouldn't recognize him. He lay on the ground, his body still twitching slightly, but he could no longer get up. Linley glanced at the attribute panel. This series of actions increased my maximum health by a full 200 points. Including the points I accumulated from swatting mosquitoes and dogs, my maximum health has now surpassed 4,500. What a pity! Linley looked at the unconscious Monka with a hint of lingering interest and sighed. This monster has a lot of health, but its health regeneration rate is too slow. If we keep fighting it, someone will die. After all, they had to leave him alive to be dealt with by the Navy. If they really killed him, there would be a lot of trouble afterwards. It's over. Zoro stepped forward, kicked Morgan who was slumped like a dead pig, and said in a complicated tone. I originally thought it would be a fierce battle, and I was even prepared to fight to the death. And the result? He didn't even draw his knife, he just stood by as a spectator, watching Linley perform his fancy slapping act. This feeling of effortless victory made the proud and arrogant future great swordsman feel extremely uncomfortable, and even a little self-doubting. It's over. Linley dusted off his hands, looking relaxed. This thing's a bit too fragile for me, it only lasted 10 hits. Looks like I'll have to go to the Grand Line to find a more durable punching bag next time. Zoro's lips twitched. 10th? That kind of slap that can shatter stones would kill an ordinary person in just 2 hits. For Monka to survive 10 blows is already considered an amazing feat of physical strength. Just as the playground was in a mess. Behind the window of an office on the top floor of the naval base building, a slender figure in orange was hiding in the shadows of the curtains, peering through the gaps to see everything that was happening on the playground. The girl had short, playful hair and was tightly gripping a long stick in her hand. Her once bright eyes were now filled with shock. She is Nami, a little thief cat who specializes in stealing pirate treasure. She infiltrated the naval base, her original target being the Grand Line chart in Morgan's collection. To this end, she even went so far as to cut her hair short and disguise herself to sneak in. Unfortunately, she was too late. Just half an hour earlier, she pried open the safe, only to find it empty except for a sarcastic note with a red-nosed clown drawing. That was Bucky Barnes's doing. That notorious pirate who had been entrenched in Orange Town had gotten there first. Nami was so angry she gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to leave, the commotion downstairs caught her attention. Then, she witnessed a scene she would never forget. The woman known as the Tyrant of the East Sea, Monka, was slapped repeatedly until she fainted, like a disobedient dog being disciplined, by a black-haired boy who looked about her age. So strong! Nami muttered to herself, her eyes darting around. Her initial frustration at losing the sea chart vanished instantly, replaced by a sly glint. She had heard of that green-haired, three-sword-wielding swordsman. He was the infamous bounty hunter Roronoa Zoro. This black-haired boy is definitely no ordinary person, he can even make Zoro stand obediently to the side as his follower. Most importantly, this guy doesn't seem to be very bright. Who would count while fighting? Who would deliberately drag out the fight when they could defeat their opponent in one move? This incredibly powerful guy with such a quirky way of thinking is simply the perfect bodyguard sent from heaven to her. Bucky and his gang are tough to deal with, I definitely can't get the chart back by myself. Nami glanced down at Linley, who was talking to Zoro downstairs, an annoying smile crept onto her lips. If I can harness this guy's power, no one will be able to take my treasure. On the playground. As Monka fell completely, the surrounding naval soldiers looked at each other, but no one fired a shot for a long time. The shadow of fear that had weighed on their hearts for 3 years seemed to dissipate with Monka's fall. Clang! It's unclear who let go first, but a long spear fell to the ground. Then came the second and the third rounds. Contrary to expectations, there was no anger or desire for revenge. Instead, these naval soldiers, who usually aided and abetted evil, wore expressions of relief. Some even collapsed to the ground, panting heavily, as if they had just survived a life-or-death ordeal. The crowd was separated. An officer wearing the rank of lieutenant colonel stepped forward. He looked somewhat frail, unlike Monka who was fierce. He walked up to Linley and Soran, glanced at the unconscious Monka on the ground, and took a deep breath. Zoro placed his hand on the hilt of his sword, his eyes sharpening. If these navy men still want to fight, he wouldn't mind going on a killing spree. However, unexpectedly, the lieutenant colonel did not order an attack. Instead, he removed his military cap and bowed deeply to Linley. Thanks. It consisted of only 2 simple words, yet the final syllable trembled. Linley raised an eyebrow. Thank me? I beat up your officer and destroyed the statues at the base. Colonel Morgan, no, Morgan, that demon, has long since betrayed justice. The lieutenant colonel straightened up, his eyes filled with tears. To build this statue, to satisfy his own desires, he turned the entire town of Shields into a living hell. We considered resisting, but faced with such absolute violence. He gave a wry smile and glanced at the soldiers around him, whose eyes were also red-rimmed. We are cowards. Until today, until you appeared. The lieutenant colonel looked at Lin Lei, his tone sincere. You helped us break free of our shackles. Leave the rest to us. We'll immediately contact naval headquarters, expose Morgan's crimes, and send him to a court-martial. The surrounding soldiers nodded in agreement, and some even threw their hats into the air, letting out a long-suppressed cheer. Monka is down. We are free. Seeing this, Zoro loosened his grip on the sword and pursed his lips. TCH, what's so special about that? Does the Navy need civilians to save it? Lin Lei, however, remained quite calm. He never intended to be a savior, he just wanted to replenish his health and, incidentally, save someone. Since you put it that way, then this wasn't assaulting a police officer, but rather an act of heroism. Lin Lei patted the lieutenant colonel on the shoulder and pointed to Monka on the ground. This guy's tough as nails, he won't die anytime soon. You'll have to clean up the mess yourself. After saying that, he turned and beckoned to Zoro. Let's go, Green Moss Head. Rika is still waiting for us to come back for dinner. I told you not to call me Green Algae Head. Zoro's forehead veins bulged, but he still followed. Wait a moment. The lieutenant colonel suddenly shouted, his face showing a mixture of surprise and disbelief. I remember now, You're Linley. That weirdo who lives on the east side of town, the one all the dogs avoid. A soldier next to him added in a low voice. Lieutenant Colonel, that's him. Everyone in town says he's been slapping dogs' ears every day for the past month. Upon hearing this, the surrounding Navy men looked at Linley with even more complicated expressions. So this man, who's incredibly strong like a monster, is the legendary dog's nightmare? They used to think it was a joke. Lin Lei, with his back to the crowd, casually waved his hand. The setting sun cast long shadows of the two of them. Bloodthirsty maniac, remember this. Lin Lei's voice came softly. As for that dog-fearing thing, that's all in the past. Let's take this baton and not let that kind of trash make the town a mess again. The sound drifted away on the evening breeze. The lieutenant colonel stared blankly at the retreating figure, finally understanding the terrifying level of cultivation hidden behind that seemingly absurd behavior. He took a deep breath, put his military cap back on, and gave a standard military salute in that direction. Attention, all! Salute! Whoosh! Dozens of sailors saluted in unison, watching the two thugs swagger out of the base gate. At a street corner not far away, Nami lowered the brim of her hat, watching Linley's departing figure, and revealed a foxy smile. Lin Lei, from dog's nightmare to blood-stacking maniac? He's getting weirder and weirder. She gently licked her lips. However, I've taken a liking to you. Chapter 4. The setting sun cast long shadows that stretched all the way to the end of the street. Lin Lei held the slightly deformed rice ball in his hand and took a bite. Click! Unmelted coarse sugar granules burst between your teeth, followed by an overpoweringly sweet taste that goes straight to the top of your head. This isn't a rice ball, it's practically a biological weapon. Lin Lei turned his head to look at the green algae head next to him. Zoro was chewing heartily, his cheeks bulging out. With each swallow, his face visibly changed from red to blue, then from blue to purple, and the veins on his forehead throbbed. Vomit! Zoro gagged, but forcefully covered his mouth with his hand, veins bulging on his neck, and forced the indescribable substance down his throat. Hey, don't push yourself! Lin Lei kindly advised. That girl Rika probably thinks the sugar bowl is a salt bowl, eating too much of that stuff can easily lead to diabetes. Zoro took a deep breath, calming his churning stomach, and his eyes became deep and weathered. He stared at the remaining half of the rice ball in his hand as if gazing at a peerless sword. Superficial. Zoro's voice was deep, carrying a detached and aloof air, as if he had seen through the illusions of the world. This is more than just food. It's the culmination of all the courage and hope that child poured into this cruel world. The sweetness? It's the echo of her pure soul. As a swordsman, if one cannot even bear this simple sentiment, how can one claim the weight of being the best in the world? After saying that, he stuffed the remaining half of the rice ball into his mouth with a death-defying spirit, chewed it vigorously, and even a tear rolled down his cheek, whether from emotion or choking, it was hard to tell. Lin Lei swallowed his portion with difficulty, giving a thumbs up as he did so. As expected of the king of naming, three-sword Lu Zoro. Even eating culinary monstrosity can make you exude a tragic sense of if I don't go to hell, who will? That's some serious class. I give it full marks. What did you say? The king of naming. Don't be so dramatic, I'm just praising you. Zoro glanced at Linley, then finally swallowed the last bite of his rice ball. He placed his hand on the Wado Ikimonji, his gaze fixed on the distant sea. That Monka may be a good-for-nothing, but you're right, the world is vast. I'm going to find that man. That man. Joe Raikkonen my hawk. When Zoro uttered that name, the fighting spirit in his eyes almost burned brightly. Hawkeye. I will defeat him and seize the title of the world's greatest swordsman. Lin Lei raised an eyebrow. This green-haired guy is such a hothead, his attempt to find Hawkeye is like trying to poke a tank with a toothpick. However, considering this guy's fate is even tougher than a cockroach's, it's good to let him experience some setbacks. If you're looking for Hawkeye, Linley said, patting the grains of rice off his hands, I do have a little inside information. Zoro whirled around, you know where he is. My uncle Kachabai came back from his boat trip the other day, and he told me he saw a small boat shaped like a coffin near the Baladi floating restaurant. Linley seriously spouted nonsense about the source of the intelligence. That man carrying the black knife seems to enjoy loitering around that area, looking for someone to kill time. Baratai, a seaside restaurant. A glint flashed in Zoro's eyes, and a wild smile spread across his lips. Thanks. I'll remember this information. After saying that, the guy didn't hesitate at all, turned around and ran, kicking up a cloud of dust. Hello! Linley shouted at his retreating figure. The port is to the east, why are you running north? That's the road to the cemetery behind the mountain. Zoro slammed on the brakes, stiffly turned around, and pointed in another direction without batting an eye. Enough with the chit-chat. Of course I know, I just want to go over there and check out the scenery first. Despite saying that, he turned around and rushed towards the residential area to the south. Linley watched the figure recede into the sunset and shook his head helplessly. The world's #1 directionally challenged person truly lives up to his name. Hopefully, he'll find the sea before he starves to death. After seeing Zoro off, Linley strolled back to the restaurant alone. Before I even reached the door, I saw that Aunt Lulgia's shop was surrounded by people. Even the second-floor balcony had a red banner with yellow lettering hanging on it. A warm welcome to the triumphant return of the heroes from Shell's Town. With this kind of entourage, you'd think it was a naval admiral inspecting work. He's here. Lin Lei is back. Someone in the crowd shouted out. Immediately afterwards, the previously noisy crowd erupted in cheers, and everyone automatically stepped aside, making way for a path paved with flowers. Aunt Lulgia stood at the door, her eyes red-rimmed, clearly having just cried. Xiao Lixiang was so excited that she jumped up and down. But at the very front of the crowd stood an extremely eye-catching figure. Her short orange hair shimmered in the sunset, her delicate features were flawless, and her well-tailored short skirt accentuated her youthful and graceful curves. Nami. Lin Lei paused in his tracks. Before he could react, the orange-haired girl rushed over like a long-lost relative. Brother Lin Lei. That brother was delivered with such tenderness and sweetness, it was 3 times sweeter than the rice ball from before. A fragrant breeze wafted over. Immediately afterwards, Lin Lei felt a heaviness in his chest. The girl's soft body crashed solidly into his arms, her 2 incredibly elastic mounds pressed tightly against his chest. The sensation was enough to make any hot-blooded young man lose his composure on the spot. The surrounding townspeople let out a good-natured chuckle and whistles. Oh my, our little hero is quite the ladies' man. A perfect match, handsome man and beautiful woman. Lin Lei looked down at Nami, who was nestled in his arms. This acting deserves an Oscar. Nami looked up, her once bright and lively eyes now brimming with tears, the corners of her eyes reddening, her pitiful appearance heartbreaking. Thank goodness! Brother Lin Lei, it's so good that you're all right. She sobbed, her voice trembling just the right amount. I was terrified when I saw you fighting that terrifying colonel. If anything happened to you, I. As she spoke, she buried her head in Lin Lei's arms again, her shoulders heaving, looking heartbroken. Just as the atmosphere reached its peak, and everyone was immersed in the touching story of the hero and the beauty, Nami's voice suddenly lowered, filled with deep sorrow and helplessness. Seeing everyone so happy makes me so envious. Shell's town is free, but my hometown. She suddenly raised her head, her eyes brimming with tears, and looked at the townspeople around her. My town is still occupied by that horrible clown Bucky. Everyone lives in constant fear and gunfire, starving, and forced to watch that red-nosed guy's shows. These words were like a tear gas canister thrown into the crowd. The townspeople, who had just been immersed in joy, had their smiles freeze instantly. Having just emerged from Monka's shadow, they are most likely to resonate with this topic. So pitiful. I've heard of the buggy pirates, they're incredibly cruel. Don't cry, little girl, we'll help you. In the crowd, a hot-blooded butcher uncle brandished his BG knife and shouted. Linley. Since you could defeat Monka, that clown thing should be no problem for you. Please help this poor girl. Yes, Lin Lei. You are our hero, we can't just stand by and watch you die. Go and knock that red-nosed guy away. Let's give Nami's town some peace and quiet. Nami instantly took control of public opinion. This is a sophisticated form of moral blackmail. First, use physical attractiveness to break down defenses, then use tears to gain sympathy, and finally use the group's sense of justice to exert pressure. Nami leaned against Linley's chest, a sly smile playing on her lips. If this big oaf nods, I can not only get the nautical chart back, but also get a powerful bodyguard for free. Plans in place. However, a large hand suddenly pressed down on her shoulder, pushing her away from his embrace a short distance with a slight force. Linley's expression remained calm. He looked down at Nami, ignoring the excited townspeople around him. Instead, he suddenly extended his right hand and rubbed his thumb and forefinger together. Excuse me, could you spare me a moment? Lin Lei's voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly throughout the entire venue. That hug just now, according to my rates, would cost you 500 berries. But since you're a beautiful woman, I'll give you a 20% discount, so it's 400. The entire room fell silent instantly. The butcher almost dropped the knife from his foot. Aunt Lulgia's mouth dropped open. Nami's sorrowful expression froze, tears still clung to her eyelashes, threatening to fall, making her look utterly comical. Hey! Nami thought she had misheard. Don't play dumb. Lin Lei looked serious. I'm a man of principle. Even close brothers keep clear accounts. You want me to go fight Pakistan? Fine. He looked around and addressed the townspeople who had been the most vocal in their commotion. Since everyone's so righteous, how about we crowdfund? Buggy's a pirate with a 15 million bounty, and he even has animal trainers and a circus troupe. For such a high-risk job, charging an appearance fee isn't unreasonable, is it? Linley held up 5 fingers and waved them in front of Nami, 10 million berries. If the money's right, I'll take down any Yonko. The townspeople, who had been indignant, instantly fell silent. 10 million? They might not be able to scrape together that much money in their entire lives. The butcher who had been shouting the loudest earlier shrank back, silently hid his knife behind his back, and whistled as he looked up at the sky. What? Everyone's silent. Lin Lei chuckled. No money? What justice can you talk about if you have no money? You. Nami gritted her teeth, instantly wiping away the tears in her eyes, and replacing them with the fierce look typical of a miser. 10 million? Why don't you just rob someone? Even a single Pele is worth my life. Then there's nothing to discuss. Lin Lei shrugged, walked past Nami, and went straight to Aunt Lulgia. Aunt Lilica, I'm starving. What are we having for dinner? Anything but Rika's rice balls is fine. Nami stomped her feet in anger as she watched Lin Lei's dashing departure. That greedy BD. This straight man has absolutely no sense of chivalry. But soon, her eyes darted around, and as she looked at Lin Lei's retreating figure, a defiant smile appeared on her face. You want money, right? If you can defeat Bucky and get the sea chart, I have plenty of ways to make you spit out the money you swallowed. Just you wait. Nami took a deep breath, adjusted her expression, and once again adopted a pitiful look before following after them. Brother Lin Lei, can we talk about this some more? How about paying in installments? Chapter 5. In the restaurant, Nami ultimately failed to extract a single promise from Linley. This man was even more stubborn than the stingiest pirate. Not only was he immune to her tears, but he even wanted to charge her in return. This unprecedented sense of frustration made Nami find even her favorite orange juice less sweet during dinner. Late at night, in a guest room on the second floor of Aunt Lillage's restaurant, Nami lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. She looked out at the dark street, clutching the coin with the windmill and orange design tightly in her hand. 10 million it is. Since you love money so much, I'll show you the ultimate level of paying debts with your body. Nami sat up, and in the moonlight, her previously sleepy eyes became bright and sparkling. Meanwhile, at the Linley mansion on the other side of the street, Lin Lei was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the newly refreshed icon in the corner of his retina. After stunning Monka, the system, which had been silent for a month, finally showed some activity. The shop system has been unlocked. Who unlocks the in-game store as the first major system in their game? Lin Lei grumbled as he clicked on the icon that gleamed with the glow of gold coins. I originally thought it would sell some amazing items like Infinity Blade or Berserker Armor, but when I opened it, the interface was extremely shabby. Only 3 treasure chests of different colors sat forlornly on the shelf. White random chest, 10 million berries. Blue random chest, 100 million berries. Purple random chest, 1 billion berries. Lin Lei stared at his savings, which amounted to only 11 million berries, and his eyelids twitched wildly. Good grief, they could just rob us outright, but they're giving us a free treasure chest instead? Back then, the inheritance his parents had painstakingly built up over their entire lives was only enough to buy the most worthless white treasure chest. Given these prices, his previous demand for a 10 million yen appearance fee from Nami was practically an act of charity. But it only unlocks after defeating Monka. Is it because this guy is a colonel in the East Blue branch, a rather important character in the story? Linley stroked his chin and analyzed, if that's the case, then the targets for grinding blood will have to be upgraded from stray dogs to those famous pirates or marines. Only by defeating these enemies can you have a chance to unlock more system features. Should we take a gamble now? 10 million berries, buy a white treasure chest, what if I get a heart steel inside? Wouldn't I be invincible then? But what if you open a red crystal account? Wouldn't that result in losing everything? Just as Lin Lei was debating whether to go all in, a faint, strange noise came from the doorway. Click. The sound of the metal lever turning the lock cylinder was exceptionally clear in the quiet of the night. Lin Lei raised an eyebrow, closed the attribute panel, and stared at the wooden door of the room. The door was slowly pushed open. By the moonlight, a graceful figure slipped in. Nami changed into an even bolder outfit, replacing her original short skirt with even shorter hot pants, and wearing a tight-fitting crop top that perfectly showcased her shapely curves. She was carrying a wooden tray with an opened bottle of red wine and 2 elegant stemmed glasses on it. Your lock-picking skills are pretty good, Lin Lei said quietly. Nami locked the door from the inside, a sly yet charming smile spreading across her face. Even if you install 10 locks, it won't matter, it's a piece of cake for me. She swayed to the bedside and placed the tray on the bedside table. The room temperature seemed to rise a few degrees as she approached, and a faint scent of oranges wafted into Lin Lei's nostrils. Nami sat on the edge of the bed, leaning slightly forward, an angle that made certain parts of her body almost visible. Brother Lin Lei, why are you still up so late? Are you waiting for those 10 million berries? Her voice became soft and husky, with a captivating magnetism. She poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed one to him. They've thought about it for a long time. I'm a person of my word, I can't come up with 10 million right now, but I can spend one night with you as a down payment, how about it? Lin Lei took the glass, but didn't drink it. He looked at the dark red liquid swirling in the glass and sneered inwardly. He's all too familiar with that little thief's tricks. There must have been something spiked in the drink. If he drinks it, he'll probably be fast asleep within minutes. Forget about the down payment, this girl will probably turn his entire house upside down, even the little bit of pewter under the floorboards. Moreover, once Nami wakes up tomorrow morning, she only needs to pretend to have been bullied to not only get rid of the 10 million, but also use it to blackmail him into fighting Bucky. What? Afraid I'll poison you? Seeing that Linley wasn't drinking, Nami generously picked up another cup and took a big gulp right in front of him. The wine slid down her throat, and her fair neck twitched slightly, appearing completely unguarded. Nami dared to drink it because she had taken a special antidote beforehand. The wine is good. Linley placed the glass back on the tray, looking at Nami with a playful expression. But the acting was terrible. Nami's expression changed slightly, but her smile didn't falter. What are you saying, brother? I meant it sincerely. Do you really want me to sleep for 10 hours and then empty my house? Lin Lei sat up, now very close to Nami. He reached out and pinched Nami's chin, his tone icy. Nami, the little thief cat of Kokoyasi village, who specializes in stealing pirate treasure. You're certainly going all out to raise 100 million berries to redeem the village. But if you think everyone is a fool like Morgan, then you're sorely mistaken. Upon hearing the keywords Kokoyasi village and 100 million berries, Nami felt as if she had been struck by lightning. That was her deepest secret, a trauma she would rather die than mention. How did you know? Her voice trembled completely, and the tenderness and charm in her eyes vanished instantly. I also know a foolish woman named Belmere who was shot dead by a long-nosed fishman while protecting her 2 adopted daughters. Lin Lei released his grip, his words like knives. This pointless self-pity will only result in you stealing everywhere like a stray dog. Do you think your deceased foster mother would feel proud, or regret saving you if she saw you now, using your body as bait? Shut up. That name completely touched Nami's sore spot. She swiftly pulled several short metal rods from her lower back, and with a few deft movements of her hands, the long rods were assembled in an instant, accompanied by a crisp metallic clanging sound. You have no right to mention her name. Nami's eyes were bloodshot, and she swung her long stick down hard at Linley's temple, creating a gust of wind. She was truly intent on killing. That was the only belief that had sustained her until now. Anyone who dared to trample on it was her mortal enemy. Lin Lei sat there, motionless. He didn't even raise his hand, letting the long stick strike his head with tremendous force. Thump! A dull thud echoed in the room. Lin Lei's head was bleeding profusely, which looked terrifying, but only Lin Lei himself knew the truth. Attacked, health -22. For someone with over 4,500 health points, this injury is slower than his self-healing speed. Is that all the strength you have? Lin Lei looked at the dumbfounded Nami and grabbed one end of the long stick. Nami tried desperately to pull back, but found that the long stick wouldn't budge. The other person's 5 fingers were like iron clamps, locking her weapon firmly. If you've decided to kill, you must be prepared to be killed. Lin Lei suddenly pulled hard, and Nami cried out in surprise, losing her balance and falling directly into Lin Lei's arms. This time, it's not acting. She could feel Linley's chest, as hard as iron, and the oppressive feeling that filled her with despair. Lin Lei pinned her to the bed, one hand gripping her throat, the other pressing against her waist. The two were in an extremely ambiguous position, but in this atmosphere, Nami only felt a chilling killing intent. Want to save that wretched village? Fine. Want to kill along? Fine. Linley lowered his head and whispered in Nami's ear. But you must understand, in this world, only the strong are qualified to talk about justice and revenge. Your petty tricks are worthless in the face of absolute power. Nami was breathing heavily, and a sickly blush rose on her cheeks as her throat was being choked. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Kill me. She completely lost the will to resist. Ha, if I kill you, who's going to help me empty Bucky's warehouse? Lin Lei released his grip, stood up, grabbed the bottle, and took a large gulp straight from his mouth. He savored the dizziness for a moment, then yawned. You've given them a good dose of medicine. Go wash your face and put away that mournful look. Lin Lei walked to the window, his back to her. We'll leave for Orange Town first thing tomorrow morning. That's your first step towards atonement. Chapter 6. In the bathroom, the faucet was old and in disrepair, dripping cold water every few seconds, which sounded particularly jarring in the quiet night. Nami leaned on the sink, looking at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was a bit smudged, and her eyes were red and swollen, making her look like an abandoned stray cat. The stinging sensation of the cold water splashing on her face brought her back to her senses slightly. She wiped her face haphazardly, water droplets dripping from her chin onto her clothes, spreading into a dark stain. That man knew all along. They even knew Belmere. These secrets, which she had buried deep in her heart and dared not even dream of touching, were casually uttered by this guy named Lin Lei as if they were gossip from a roadside stall. Nami took a deep breath, composed herself, and pushed open the bathroom door. The room was dark, with only the moonlight from outside the window cutting a pale patch of light across the floor. The dark figure on the bed was no longer moving, its breathing was even and long, even carrying a faint snoring sound. Asleep? In this situation, how could someone who had murderous intent towards him and was carrying a weapon actually fall asleep in his room? Nami stood by the bed, raised the long stick, and aimed the tip at Linley's Adam's apple. Just once. If you just shove it in hard, this terrifying thing will shut up forever. Those secrets will remain buried deep inside her, and no one will ever know that she was once treated like a clown, her dignity trampled underfoot. Nami's hands were trembling. It wasn't out of fear of killing, making a living at sea meant that getting blood on one's hands was a common occurrence. She hesitated because a scene from earlier that day flashed before her eyes. The giant axe, powerful enough to split rocks, was caught effortlessly by this hand. Even steel can't cut him, so what can this stick in my hand do? Should I scratch his back? Monster! Nami cursed under her breath, her raised arm frozen in midair for a full 2 minutes before finally falling limply to the ground. She dared not gamble. If this attack fails to kill Linley, her fate will be far worse than death. The indifference in the man's eyes convinced her that if she made another move, he would not hesitate to snap her neck. Nami sighed, put away the stick, and instead of leaving the room, she hugged her knees and huddled in the corner furthest from the bed. The floor was hard and cool to the touch. She buried her head in her arms, but her gaze darted through the gaps in her hair, warily watching the figure on the bed. Where did this guy come from? When did such a person appear in a backwater like Shell's town? Sleepiness washed over me like a tide. Before this, she hadn't slept well for several days. After a brief relaxation of the highly tense nerves, fatigue instantly took over the body. Not long after, a soft, suppressed breathing sound came from the corner of the wall. On the bed, Lin Lei, who had been sound asleep, slowly opened one eye, glanced at the corner of the wall, then turned over and found a more comfortable position. If that little thief had actually dared to make a move, there would already be a corpse in this room. But this girl was sensible enough. Lin Lei closed his eyes, his consciousness sinking into his mind. Just half an hour ago, while Nami was washing her face, he made a decision that would cause him heartache for half a month to go all in. The inheritance left by his parents, plus the wages he earned working at Aunt Lillage's shop, adds up to a total of 11 million berries. The money I originally intended to save for retirement or getting married has now been poured into that damned systems shop. Purchase successful, 10 million berries deducted. Received, 1 white random treasure chest. Watching his balance almost instantly disappear, Lin Lei felt his heart bleeding. That's real money. If you converted it into meat buns, it could circle the town of Shells 10 times. If they give me something useless, I'll go to the naval base and slap Monka awake again, making him pay me back. Linley gritted his teeth and mentally activated the white treasure chest that was floating in the void. The treasure chest shook twice, and the lid popped open. A faint white light flashed, and a card depicting a bizarre clown mask slowly appeared. The back of the card reads the skill name, Deception Magic. Source, Shako the Clown. Linley was stunned for a moment, then suddenly sat up in bed, almost bursting out laughing. Amazing skill. It's the Joker's Q skill. In this realistic pirate world, the descriptions of skills have undergone some subtle changes. Deception Magic, Level 1 consumes a small amount of mana to instantly teleport to any location within 10 meters and enter stealth for 3.5 seconds. The next basic attack while stealthed will deal bonus physical damage. Cooldown, 1 minute. Displacement, invisibility, damage. Trinity. For Linley right now, this is a godsend. While his current stats show an impressive amount of health, his weaknesses are also quite obvious. Short legs, lacking explosive power. While slapping someone is extremely insulting, against a true master, you probably wouldn't even get a chance to touch them. With Deception Magic, the situation is completely different. If you can beat them, sneak up and give them a big surprise. If you can't, just walk through walls and run away. With the added speed boost from swift steps, anyone who wants to catch him now will probably have to turn the entire island upside down. This move wasn't a loss, you could even say it was a huge profit. Linley was in a great mood, and even Nami, who was huddled in the corner, seemed more pleasing to the eye. With this skill, the chances of causing trouble for Bucky in Orange Town will be much higher. Although in the original comics, Bucky appears to be a comedic character who only knows how to clown around, and his bounty is only 15 million berries. But Linley never dared to underestimate this red-nosed man. To be an apprentice on the ship of the pirate King Roger, to be sworn brothers with Shanks, one of the 4 emperors, and even to emerge unscathed from the blade of the world's greatest swordsman, Mihawk, during the Marineford War. This resume doesn't look like that of a complete failure. Hawkeye/Kin split an iceberg, yet it couldn't kill Bucky. Linley wasn't sure if his slap would cause any real damage to that schizophrenic maniac. It seems we'll have to outsmart them. Linley stroked his chin, recalling the plot of the original novel. Bucky has 2 things he cares about most, treasure and his red nose. As long as you grasp these 2 points, you won't have to worry about him not giving in. Pakistan has amassed considerable wealth through its years of tyrannical rule in the East Daxia Sea. According to the original story, Bucky amassed 10 million berries in Orange. That's just enough to buy another white treasure chest. Linley licked his lips, a flash of greed crossing his eyes. People who have been terrified of poverty always have an exceptionally keen sense for money. If this deal goes through, the title of bloodthirsty maniac won't be limited to Shell's Town anymore. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, piercing the room like sharp swords. Nami woke up groggily, feeling as if her whole body was falling apart. I slept on the hard floor all night, and my neck is so stiff I can barely turn it. She sat up, rubbing her aching shoulders, and found the bed empty. Woke up. The sound came from the doorway. Linley was leaning against the door frame, holding 2 steaming hot meat buns in his hands, with half of one still dangling from his mouth. Let's hurry up and leave after we finish eating. If we're late and that red-nosed Bucky runs away, who will I ask for my 10 million berries? Nami paused for a moment, then realized what was happening, and her stomach promptly growled in protest. Her face flushed, but she didn't stand on ceremony. She stood up, walked over, snatched the bun from Linley's hand, and took a big bite. You know that's Bucky too. That guy has several hundred men under his command, plus an animal trainer and a swordsman on a unicycle. Just the 2 of us. With food stuffed in her mouth, Nami mumbled her question. What's wrong with 2 people? Fewer people means things are easier to get done, and no one's competing with me for a share of the profits. Linley swallowed the food in his mouth, his face calm. Besides, who said we were going to confront those hundreds of people head-on? Seeing Linley's confident demeanor, Nami's unease lessened slightly. Do you have a plan? Certainly. Lin Lei clapped his hands. The plan is simple, I'll draw the fire from the front and create a commotion. You'll sneak in and empty Pakistan's treasure vault. Ha! Nami nearly choked to death, rolling her eyes dramatically. Isn't that basically sending me to steal something while you go to your death? If you get killed, I won't be able to escape either. Don't worry, I won't die. In this East Daxia Sea, the person who can kill me hasn't been born yet. Lin Lei flicked Nami's forehead, making her throb and stomp her feet in pain. As long as you listen to me and don't try anything clever, but if I find out you've dared to embezzle the treasure. Lin Lei suddenly leaned closer, lowered his voice, and said in a chilling tone. I've heard that even a cat thief who steals pirate treasure can be worth millions on some black market bounties. Nami shivered as she looked at the face so close to hers. She's fairly good looking, so how can her heart be blacker than coal? I know. You stingy little thing. Nami turned and walked out angrily. Hurry up. Aren't we in a hurry? Watching Nami's retreating figure, Linley shrugged, and then the two walked out of the house. Before long, the two arrived at the port of Shell's town. A small sloop was moored there, it was the vehicle Nami had stolen earlier. Get on the ship. Linley leaped and landed steadily on the deck. He turned to look at Nami, who was still lingering on the shore. What? Regretting it? It's too late to run now. You still haven't paid back the 10 million you owe me. Who's trying to run away? Nami stood beside the mooring post covered in barnacles, arms crossed. I'm afraid you, a landlubber, might die on the way and drag me down with you. She held up 3 fingers and waved them in front of Lin Lei, her tone full of disappointment and frustration. Do you know how long it takes to get to Orange Town? Even with perfect wines, drifting with the ocean currents will take a full 3 days. Look at this boat, it's all ropes and planks, not a drop of fresh water. What, are you planning to catch fish in the sea with that hand that can only slap, or are you hoping for a windfall? Nami got more and more excited as she spoke, her chin slightly raised. Although I'm greedy, I don't want to starve to death at sea delivering packages to Pakistan. Without supplies, I'm not boarding this ship. Lin Lei leaned against the slightly chipped paint on the ship's side, quietly watching Nami's performance, and only slowly picked at his ear after she finished speaking. Are you done talking? That's all. Since there are no supplies anyway, I'll just... Bang! Lin Lei flicked his toe, and the heavy cover on the lower deck flipped open, revealing the world beneath. Nami instinctively peeked over, but the taunts she had prepared caught in her throat, leaving only a choked "Ga." The cramped cargo hold was now crammed full, leaving no room to even step. 3 small mountains were stacked on the left. Those were dried bacon wrapped in oil paper, whole smoked fish, and freshly baked bread that was still warm. On the right are 6 oak barrels arranged in neat rows. The most outrageous thing was the 2 bamboo baskets in the corner, filled with sweet apples, a specialty of Shell's town, each one plump and round, even with morning dew still clinging to them. This isn't a trip to hunt pirates, it's more like a noble young master having a picnic at sea. This. Nami rubbed her eyes, pointing at the pile of supplies, her words slurred. Did you rob the naval base's mess hall last night? Superficial. Lin Lei grabbed a cable from the side, casually wrapped it around his hand twice, and. This is a small token of appreciation from the townspeople. Aunt Liljia was worried I'd get too thin on the road, so she mobilized the whole town to contribute this early this morning. Those lovely townspeople were incredibly generous with their supplies, even the butcher contributed 2 of his best pig hind legs. Lin Lei picked up a fresh apple, wiped it on his clothes, took a bite, and juice gushed out. After all, I helped them solve a big problem, so charging them a toll isn't unreasonable, is it? Besides, he glanced at Nami, who was still in a daze, and added insult to injury. That's called personal charisma. Unlike some petty thieves who do nothing but steal and cheat. Nami blushed and was about to retort when Linley tossed her the remaining half of the apple. Catch it. Don't just stand there. You're in charge for the next 3 days, raising the sails and steering the ship are all your responsibility. Lin Lei pointed to the rolled-up canvas on the mast. Get to work quickly. If I don't see the Orange Town docks in 3 days, I'll deduct your entire share of the profits. You're the main force. Your whole family are the main force. Nami took the apple and took a big bite, as if she wanted to bite off a piece of someone's flesh. Also, I'll charge a storage fee for this shipment. That's labor too. All right, as long as you can get the boat there, I'll give you that bucket of water for a bath. Lin Lei waved his hand, found a comfortable corner where he wouldn't be in the sun, lay down, and pulled his hat brim down to cover his face. Set sail, my personal navigator. Chapter 7. The sea breeze is a bit salty, and the sun is a bit scorching. For Nami, the 3-day voyage was nothing short of a survival game of hellish difficulty. Not only did she have to steer, raise the sails, and wash the deck, but she also had to peel apples for that old man. And what about Lin Lei? This guy is like a noble young master on vacation, lying around all day among the ropes, legs crossed, flipping through the newspapers delivered by newsbirds, with a glass of rum on the rocks next to him. What drove Nami crazy wasn't the work itself, but Linley's restless hands. Don't move, there are mosquitoes. Lin Lei suddenly sat up, put 2 fingers together, and flicked Nami's smooth forehead at an extremely tricky angle. Bang! The sound was crisp and clear, even with a slight echo. Ouch! Nami clutched her forehead, tears welling in her eyes from the pain, and nearly threw the mop into the sea. Where did these mosquitoes come from at sea? This is the 8th time you've flicked my forehead today. It's swollen. It's really swollen. Lin Lei withdrew his finger and glanced at the green numbers flashing across his retina. Triggering unbreakable grip, permanently increases health by 4. Mosquitoes are invisible, but that doesn't matter. Lin Lei lay down again, in a good mood. The most important thing is the feel. Although Nami provides far fewer attribute points than elite monsters like Morgan, only a pitiful 4 points at a time, which is about the same as killing a slightly larger rat. But even a mosquito's leg is meat, and little by little, over these 3 days, I've managed to gain over 100 points to my maximum health. Moreover, his control over his power is now becoming increasingly masterful. To paraphrase Hawkeye, the king of basic attacks, when you don't want to use a slash, you can't even cut through a piece of paper. Lin Lei felt that he was currently in this mysterious state. This blow, powerful enough to shatter rocks, landed on Nami's forehead, only causing a bump. The skin wasn't even broken. This is called micromanagement. Pervert. Violent maniac. Sadist. Nami hid behind the mast, rubbing her forehead and muttering to herself. Once I get the treasure, I'll definitely buy poison to kill you. Arrive. Linley's voice interrupted Nami's curse. On the horizon ahead, the outline of a colorful yet lifeless island gradually came into focus. Orange Town. Compared to the oppressive atmosphere of Shell's Town, this place feels more like ruins. The iconic Bikudop pirate ship was moored in the harbor, its huge clown graffiti canvas fluttering in the wind. The streets were deserted, with houses destroyed by artillery fire everywhere, and black smoke still rising from the ruins. The ship docked. Lin Lei jumped onto the dock and stretched. Let's split up. Lin Lei pointed to the tall building in the town center that looked the best and was still playing circus music. I'll go see that red-nosed guy and get their attention. As for you. He glanced at Nami. Change your clothes, or you'll get killed like a nobody before you even steal anything. Do you need to tell me? As soon as Nami brought up serious matters, she immediately dropped her submissive demeanor, her eyes gleaming with longing for Beale. If you can hold off that monster, I can steal his underwear. Okay, let's see how you do. Linley waved his hand and swaggered towards the town center. The rooftop of the tavern in the town center. This place has been transformed into an open-air circus stage. Captain Bucky. The power of this specially made Bucky bomb is truly astonishing. A pirate henchman gave a fawning thumbs up. The man sitting in the chair had a conspicuous round, red nose, and his face was painted with clown makeup. He was playing with a cannonball in his hand. Of course. Bucky said smugly. With this, I can blast away all the troublemakers. But who did you just call red-nosed? Whose nose was as red as a tomato? Bucky's smile vanished instantly, veins bulged on his forehead, and his eyes became extremely terrifying. No. No. Captain, I didn't say that, that's not what I meant. The henchman turned ashen-faced and knelt on the ground, kowtowing frantically. Die a glorious death. In this world, no one can laugh at my nose. Bucky raised his hand, and a throwing knife miraculously materialized from his palm, ready to finish off this fool. Hey, it's getting lively here. A sudden voice interrupted. Bucky paused, then turned his head. A black-haired boy was standing at the top of the stairs, looking on with an expression of watching a show. Who are you? Bucky narrowed his eyes, his expression menacing. Dozens of pirates instantly drew their swords and spears, surrounding Lin Lei. I'm here to look for a job. Linley ignored the gleaming blades around him and walked straight to within 5 meters of Bucky, stopping in his tracks. I heard Captain Bucky's team has good benefits, so I came here specifically to offer my services. Looking for a job? Bucky paused for a moment, then let out a piercing, eerie laugh. Ha ha ha. Kid, you've come to the wrong place. My pirate crew isn't for just any Tom, DK, or Harry. If you want to join my ship, either you need to be acrobats, or you need to be a really good fighter. He looked Linley up and down, his eyes filled with disdain. Look at your delicate skin and tender flesh, what can you do? Be lion food. Linley smiled. He didn't waste any words, not even a warning. My foot slipped, and swift steps started. He appeared like a ghost in front of a pirate who was grinning and brandishing a knife. Smack! The slap was so fast that no afterimage could be seen. The burly man, weighing at least 200 pounds, didn't even utter a sound. He spun around 3.5 times like a top before falling straight backward, crashing to the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. He foamed at the mouth and went into shock on the spot. Trigger unbreakable grip, health +5. The entire hall fell silent. The pirate's sinister smiles froze. Not bad strength. Bucky raised an eyebrow, the disdain in his eyes lessening slightly. However, strength alone is not enough. On my ship, those who are only strong can only serve as porters. Oh? What would the captain like to see? Linley shook his hand. Sword swallowing? Bowl balancing? Or a magical transformation? That's lowbrow humor. Bucky snorted and snapped his fingers. Machi. Exist. A man with hair resembling a rag doll's head rushed out. Behind him followed a huge, ferocious-looking lion. Animal trainer Machi, and his beloved pet Leaky. Nikki is a very picky eater. Pakistan smiled sinisterly. Kid, since you're so confident, how about playing a game with Leaky? If you can stick your head in its mouth for 10 seconds without getting bitten off, I'll acknowledge you're qualified to be my subordinate. The surrounding pirates burst into gloating laughter. The captain is so wicked. He's throwing the ship to the lions. That guy who dared to try last time, his head was chewed up. Linley looked at the lion with its gaping maw and bits of meat stuck between its teeth, but instead of being afraid, his eyes lit up. Blood packs delivered to your door? That's it? Linley curled his lip in disdain. Come on, little kitty. He walked up to the lion, patted Leaky on the head, and then dutifully stuck his head into the lion's foul-smelling mouth. Machi was stunned. Bucky was stunned. Is this kid an idiot? He's really sticking his neck out? Leaky. Bit him to death. Machi reacted and immediately gave the order. Roar. Without any hesitation, Leaky slammed his jaws shut. Snap. The sickening sound of bones cracking echoed throughout the stadium. Everyone witnessed the lion's sharp fangs piercing deeply into Linley's neck, and blood gushed out instantly, staining the lion's mane red. Ah! It's broken! The neck is broken! Some of the more timid pirates cried out in alarm. Bucky shook his head, somewhat bored. Turns out he's a madman, how boring, drag him away and feed him. Before he could finish speaking, Bucky's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. The boy, who should have been dead, suddenly raised his hand and, with some effort, pried open the lion's jaws and pulled its head out. Several horrific bloody holes on his neck were stopping bleeding and scabbing over at a visible speed. Lin Lei cracked his neck. A line of red text floated across my retina. Physical damage taken, -186. Current health, 4534/4720. For him now, this level of physical damage is like peeling off a layer of skin. His body's data-driven nature means that as long as his health bar isn't depleted, he can reattach his head even if it's severed, let alone just being bitten a few times. It's quite powerful, but you really need to brush your teeth. Linley wiped the drool off his neck with disgust, looking at the dumbfounded Bucky. How was it, Captain? Was that acrobatic act dazzling enough? There was a full 5 seconds of silence. It's so sparkly, it's too bright. Bucky jumped up from his chair, his nose practically glowing with excitement. How did you do that? Iron body? Or a devil fruit user? Never mind. This move was practically made for the circus. Ha ha ha. Kid, what's your name? I approve your membership. Although Bucky is brutal, he has a natural affinity for this strange immortality. After all, he himself is an unkillable monster. Linley. All right. Linley. Let's have a feast tonight. To welcome our new comrade. Bring out all the food and wine. Night fell. A bonfire was lit in the square of Orange Town. The pirates were tearing into the stolen roasted meat, spilling cheap rum everywhere. Linley sat next to Bucky, twirling a bottle of liquor in his hand, chatting idly with the red-nosed captain. His gaze, however, subtly drifted towards the half-collapsed warehouse not far away. Just now, he saw a familiar orange figure flash by, carrying an outrageously large package on its back, like an ant-moving house. That little thief cat is quick and agile. Come on. Brother Linley. Bucky's face was flushed from drinking, and his red nose shone even brighter. He put his arm around Linley's shoulder. Following me is your good fortune. Once we reach the Grand Line, we'll go find Captain John's treasure. That's right, Captain Bucky is definitely a man destined for great things. Linley gave a perfunctory reply, while secretly plotting how to trick the red-nosed man into going somewhere secluded to slap him. Suddenly, a pirate on patrol came running over in a panic. Captain! Captain! Something terrible has happened. What's wrong? Did the sky fall? Bucky slammed down his glass in annoyance. I went to the warehouse to get some wine, and I found the lock had been pried open. The pirate stammered. And I caught this woman in the back alley. Two pirates roughly shoved a figure as they approached. Short orange hair, a tight-fitting outfit, and a huge package hanging on her back. Nami was pale and forced to kneel on the ground. The gold coins and jewels in her bag were scattered all over the ground, glittering in the firelight. Oh! Bucky narrowed his eyes, his gaze shifting back and forth between the treasure and Nami. His previously hazy, drunken eyes instantly turned icy cold. How dare you steal my treasure? Linley paused slightly in his grip on the bottle. Is this what they call professionalism? This little thief cat, it flipped over way too fast. Beiji stood up, several throwing knives appearing out of thin air in his hand, and looked at Linley beside him with a sinister gaze. Brother Linley, since you're new here, how about I leave this thieving little cat to you? It'll be a good opportunity to show everyone your sincerity. All eyes immediately turned to Linley. Nami raised her head, biting her lip tightly, her eyes filled with despair and fear. Linley sighed, slowly stood up, and walked over to Nami with the wine bottle in his hand. Tisk, troublesome. He muttered something under his breath and raised the bottle in his hand. Chapter 8. The bottle hung suspended in mid-air, the remaining brown rum at the bottom swaying, reflecting Nami's terrified face. The surrounding pirates held their breath, their eyes wide, waiting to see the brains splatter. Machi even pressed the lion Liki's head down a little, ready to snatch the carcass at any moment. Nami kept her eyes tightly shut, her body trembling uncontrollably. At that moment, countless images flashed through her mind, finally settling on Belmir's smiling face. Is it almost over? Captain Bucky. The expected excruciating pain didn't come, instead, Linley's lazy voice rang out first. He slowly lowered the bottle he had been holding, squatted down, and used the bottle's spout to lift Nami's chin, examining her from left to right. Such a beautiful young woman, it would be such a waste to kill her directly. She has such delicate skin, how about I enjoy her for one night? I can kill her tomorrow when I'm tired of her. Nami suddenly opened her eyes and stared at Linley in disbelief. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Play all night. Bucky sat in a high-backed chair, tossing a throwing knife in his hand, his eyes sinister. Linley, my rule is traitors die. This woman stole my treasure, she must die immediately. If you don't act, I'll kill you too. There is absolutely no room for negotiation. Linley sighed and stood up with some regret. All right, you're the boss, so you call the shots. But before we start, to ease the bloody atmosphere, how about I perform a magic trick for everyone? Magic? Bucky frowned. How come this kid has so many tricks up his sleeve? Feeding the lion with that head was just a warm-up, the real show is yet to come. Linley casually tossed the bottle aside and walked straight toward the scattered treasure. By this time, the huge package had been torn open, and gold coins, jewelry necklaces, and ruby rings were piled on the ground like trash. Bathed in the firelight, the treasure gleamed with an alluring luster that could drive any pirate mad. Linley walked up to the pile of treasure, his back to the crowd, and grinned in an exaggerated way. That 10 million berries was originally intended to buy the box. Instead of going through all the trouble of moving it and having to worry about Nami stealing it back, it's better to just use it now. Watch closely, this is the moment to witness a miracle. Linley spread his arms wide and shouted loudly, but his right hand seemed to casually press down on the pile of gold coins. Silently recite in your mind. System, recharge. Purchase a white random treasure chest. High-value assets detected, converting. Recharge successful, 10.8 million berries. Purchase successful, 10 million berries deducted. Received 1 random white treasure chest. Balance, 1.8 million berries. Disappear. Linley snapped his fingers. There was no smoke, and no obstruction. Under the watchful eyes of dozens of people, the pile of gold coins and jewels that had formed a small mountain vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by air. Only a few broken floor tiles that were originally underneath the treasure remained, standing forlornly exposed. The entire hall fell silent. The pirates rubbed their eyes, then rubbed them again, their mouths agape, wide enough to fit an apple. Nami was completely stunned. The thing she had risked her life to steal was just gone? How about it? Linley clapped his hands, turned to look at Bucky. Was this treasure-making magic trick spectacular enough? Bucky sat in the chair, completely frozen as if struck by lightning. He stared at the empty ground, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets, his red nose turning purple from congestion. That's his money. This was the capital he had saved up for so long, preparing to dig for treasure on the Grand Line. That's it. Where is my treasure? Bucky's voice sounded like it was being squeezed out from between his teeth, and it trembled. I already said it's magic. Lin Lei shrugged. Since it's magic, it's normal for it to disappear. As for where it went, that's a trade secret. Secret's my A. A piercing roar echoed through the night sky. Bucky went completely berserk, leaping off his chair, 4 sharp daggers clutched in each hand. Give me my money back. I'm going to chop you into pieces. A cleaver that shatters into pieces. Without any further ado, Bucky swung his hands out forcefully. With the power of the devil fruit, his 2 hands detached from his wrists and, carrying daggers, shot towards Linley like missiles. Extremely fast. Watch out! Nami shouted instinctively. Lin Lei stood still, neither dodging nor avoiding. Pfft! 8 daggers were firmly embedded in Linley's chest, abdomen, and shoulder. Blood splattered. Die! Bucky laughed maniacally. Physical damage taken, minus 240. Current health, 4420/4760. Lin Lei glanced down at the dagger stuck in his body, as if it were a few toothpicks. He looked up, flashing Bucky a defiant smile, give it your all, I can handle it. Before he could finish speaking, Lin Lei's figure suddenly twisted. Fraud magic activated. Linley vanished into thin air in a faint wisp of orange smoke. Bucky, who was controlling the pilot to continue the attack, froze. Invisibility? Damn, is this guy an ability user too? Later. A cold voice sounded behind Bucky's ear. Before Bucky could react, a hand that wasn't particularly large but contained immense force slammed into the back of his head with a whoosh of wind. Smack! The crisp sound was even louder than when the fan was slapped. The first attack while in stealth mode deals additional physical critical damage. In addition, there's the percentage-based magic damage from Grasp of the Undying. Bucky felt like he'd been kicked in the head by an elephant, he saw stars, and his entire upper body was sent flying, spinning 7 or 8 times in the air before crashing heavily into the wall beside him. Boom! The walls collapsed, and dust billowed everywhere. Triggering Unbreakable Grip, permanently increases health by 30. Awesome! Lin Lei shook his hand. This feels much better than Morgan's hard, muscular face. Although Bucky can split, his main body is still made of flesh. The captain got attacked. The surrounding pirates then realized what was happening and charged at Linley with their swords and guns raised, yelling. Attack him together! Chop him up! Don't get in the way! Lin Lei's footwork shifted, swift steps activated, and he glided into the crowd like a fish. He neither drew his sword nor used his fists. Wherever he went, there was only the crisp sound of slaps. Smack! 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 Every pirate who charged forward was slapped so hard they spun around in circles, foaming at the mouth, before they could even see Linley's movements. Linley was playing whack-a-mole, mowing down the minions with only +3 or +4 health as he walked toward Bucky in the ruins. BD, unforgivable. The ruins exploded. Pakistan's signature red nose was now swollen and looked even more comical. His body was torn to pieces, his hands, feet, and torso were all floating in the air, with only his 2 feet still on the ground. The carnival of falling apart. Bucky roared, and every part of his body attacked Linley from all directions like a torrential downpour. This kind of all-around, 3-dimensional attack is difficult for even a master swordsman to defend against. But Linley was completely unprepared. He let the flying fists and daggers hit him, and even deliberately used his chest to catch Bucky's flying punch. Health points -15. Health points -22. Health points -18. A series of insignificant damage numbers popped up. Looking at this injury, which was barely better than a mosquito bite, Lin Lei couldn't help but feel a strong sense of absurdity. How can it be so weak? Although this guy is the comedic relief in the original work, he was still an apprentice on the pirate King Roger's ship and a brother to one of the 4 emperors, Shanks. He's seen more grand scenes than he's eaten salt, so how come in actual combat, his attack power isn't even worthy of carrying Monka's shoes? This is really Bucky, considering this guy has always acted like a complete noob. But this is also very un-Bucky. With that kind of legendary resume, any dog that had been in that position for so many years would have evolved into Cerberus by now, right? So, has this guy really only grown a red nose and not improved his abilities over the past 10 years? Or is he still putting on an act? Are you tickling me? Lin Lei suppressed his inner grumbling, grabbed Bucky's flying hand, slapped it hard across the back of his hand, and then threw it back like trash. Bucky is going crazy. He had roamed the East Daxia Sea for so many years and had never seen such a monster. He can't cut you down, he can't stab you to death, and that's not all. The key thing is that this guy only hits people in the face. Specially made Pakistani shells. Bring the cannon over here. Bucky roared in exasperation, his body parts rapidly reassembling in mid-air. I'm going to blast this kid to smithereens. Several pirates immediately pushed a cannon painted with a clown image and turned it around. Nami turned pale upon seeing this. That was a devastating weapon capable of leveling half a street with a single shot. Linley. Run. Those are Pakistani bombs. Run. Linley glanced at the dark muzzle of the cannon, but instead of retreating, he activated the deception magic that had just cooled down. The figure vanished. The next second, he appeared directly above the cannon barrel, stepping onto the cannon with one foot. This thing is too dangerous, confiscate it. Linley picked up the specially made red shell that was about to be inserted into the cannon barrel with one hand, weighed it in his hand, and then looked at Bucky floating in mid-air. Is this your trump card? Bucky watched the boy who was using his prized Bucky ball as a toy, and for the first time, he felt fear. Here you go. Linley's arm muscles bulged, and like throwing a baseball, he slammed the head-sized shell hard at Bucky. No. Bucky's eyes widened in terror, and he frantically tried to split his body apart to escape. But the distance was too close. Boom. A massive fireball exploded at low altitude, and a terrifying shockwave swept across the entire plaza. The attacking pirates were blown away like withered leaves, and Nami had to lie on the ground and hold onto a rock to avoid being swept away. The smoke and dust cleared. A large, charred crater remained on the ground. Bucky escaped fatal injuries thanks to his splitting ability, but he was still blown to bits, his gorgeous clown costume turned into rags, and his once proud red nose turned as black as charcoal. He lay sprawled at the bottom of the pit, still twitching slightly. Lin Lei walked to the edge of the pit and looked down at him. Still fighting, Captain Bucky? Lin Lei squatted down, smiled, and stretched out his hand, making his signature money-rubbing gesture. If you can't fight anymore, shouldn't we talk about compensation for my emotional distress? Bucky shuddered, looking at Linley's hand that had just slapped him away countless times, and tears involuntarily streamed down his face. Not only is the money gone, even people are being extorted. Where the hell did these robbers come from? Chapter 9. At the bottom of the pit, Bucky had stopped crying. His once proud clown face was now so swollen that even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. He looked a whole size bigger, and his red nose seemed less jarring now, since his entire face was red. Really gone? Lin Lei squatted by the pit, looking like a vengeful ghost demanding repayment. It's really gone. Bucky's speech was slurred, and tears mixed with snot streamed down his face. All my money was in that bundle, and you just made it all disappear. Brother, sir, just kill me, I really don't have a single beta left. Lin Lei was somewhat disappointed. This red-nosed guy gains 30 health points each time he triggers Undying Grip, but despite his long health bar, his mental defenses are as fragile as paper. After only 25 slaps, which is less than 800 points of maximum health, this guy's eyes rolled back and he was about to go into shock. They're too weak to handle. Moreover, this guy keeps complaining about being poor, which is really annoying. Since you have no money, then you're of no use to me. Linley stood up, patted the dust off his trousers. Perfect timing. I'll give you a ride as a thank you for the life points you provided. Before Bucky could even process what health points meant, Linley grabbed him by the collar. At this moment, Beiji, due to being split for too long and being brutally beaten, had not yet fully reassembled his body and was lifted up like a rag doll. Linley strode toward the still-smoking Pakistan bomb cannon. What are you going to do? Bucky stared at the dark, gaping cannon muzzle, a chill running down his spine. Don't you like fancy things? Here's a big one for you. Without saying a word, Linley tucked the batik into a ball and stuffed it headfirst into the cannon barrel. No. Yamat. This doesn't make sense in physics. I'm an ability user, I'm afraid of seawater. Linley completely ignored his nonsense and even thoughtfully kicked it in with his heel to make sure it was packed tightly. Then, he casually pulled a still-burning piece of firewood from the nearby fire. Goodbye, Clown King. The fuse is lit. Boom. The enormous recoil kicked up a cloud of dust. A brilliant tongue of fire shot from the cannon, accompanied by a piercing, drawn-out scream. Bucky transformed into a shooting star, streaking across the night sky and flying straight into the depths of the sea. Goodbye and best of luck. Linley shaded his eyes with his hand, watched the star disappear, and nodded in satisfaction. After dealing with the major issues, Linley turned around and scanned the surrounding area of the square. The pirates, who were originally lying haphazardly on the ground, are now still in various difficult corpse poses. Some lay face down in the rubble, motionless, some buried themselves under the ruins with only their buttocks showing, and some even stuck out half of their tongues to make it look realistic. The most outrageous one is the lion, Li. The creature covered its eyes with its two paws, its massive body huddled behind a wooden plank that clearly couldn't conceal it, and it was still trembling. Stop acting. Linley walked to the center of the square, cleared his throat. I'll count to 3, and if anyone's still lying there, I'll stuff him into the cannon and send him to reunite with your captain. 1. Before the sound even faded, the corpses in the square that were supposed to be dead instantly came back to life. 2. Hundreds of pirates sprang into rebellion like startled rabbits, and even the lion stood on its hind legs, its two front paws tucked behind its back in a docile manner, as if to say, I was just passing by. The animal trainer Machi and the unicycle riding chief of staff Kabeji stood at the front, their faces bruised and swollen, yet they still had to force smiles that looked worse than crying. Great hero, what are your orders? Linley pointed to the open space in front of him, line up. Ah! Can't you understand human language? Linley raised an eyebrow. Line up in a row, from tallest to shortest, hurry up. You, the lion, get in too. Although no one knew what this scoundrel was up to, no one dared to utter a single word, given the still smoking cannon muzzle. In less than half a minute, a neatly arranged line, as if it were about to be inspected, was formed. Linley flexed his wrists, looking at the group of walking blood bags, his eyes sparkling with the joy of a farmer's harvest. Although these small fodder enemies only provide 3 to 5 health points each time, and there's a daily limit of 80 attempts, every little bit helps. Bucky only contributed 25 times, so let's make the most of the remaining attempts. Hey, stick your face out here. Linley walked up to Kabeji, who was at the head of the line. Kabeji swallowed hard and shakily brought his face, which was swollen like a steamed bun, closer. Smack! Crisp and pleasant to the ear. Kabeji spun around twice, feeling dizzy and about to collapse, when Linley caught him. "Don't fall, go squat over there, next one." Machi quickly caught up. Smack. Next. Nami stood by the ruins, clutching the stick she used for self-defense tightly in her hand, completely dumbfounded. She had seen ruthless pirates and greedy marines, but she had never seen such a freak who treated beating people like an assembly line. Under the moonlight, the boy's movements were mechanical yet precise. Raise your hand, wave your hand, and you're done. After each pirate was slapped, instead of harboring resentment, they felt relieved as if they had received a reward. They covered their faces and scrambled to the side to squat down, afraid of being too slow and getting slapped again. Even the lion was not spared. Lin Lei even complained that the fur on its face was too thick and affected the feel of it, so he deliberately parted the mane and gave that long face a solid shove. What kind of fetish is this? Nami feels her worldview is being rebuilt. Strangeness. That's so strange. But within this eeriness lies a power that cannot be ignored. The buggy pirate.
वीडियोस बनाने हैं, फिल्मोरा है ना?